He is known as the sword fanatic. He wields his sword all year round. While his peers are eating or farming, he is still wielding his sword. After 60 years, the villager have grown up hearing the sound of his sword, and now he is a powerful village chief. However, when he passed by the sword fanatic's house, he panicked and broken because the sound of his sword had stopped. Seeing the man who stood tall with his giant sword and fierce eyes until the end of his life, the village chief closed his eyes and helped the man lay down. When he opened his eyes again, he was back to being a young man, and it seemed like the sword fanatic's entire life was just a dream, because he did nothing all day except eat, drink and sleep. He was also known as the idler. When he thought it was just a dream and tried to go back to sleep, he couldn't. The feeling of wielding a sword for a long time made him extremely tired, but the comfort of the muscles after being stretched made him keep thinking about it. When he thought about it, he couldn't stand it and quickly ordered his butler to take him to the place where he practiced sword fighting. When he arrived at the training ground, the noisy crowd suddenly became quiet and whispers followed. "Look, am I dreaming? The wastrel who only lies in bed is actually here at our training ground." But he didn't hear the whispers and walked directly to the weapon rack, reached out and picked up the heaviest sword with all his might. At that moment, he felt like he was one with the man in his dream and started wielding the giant sword with great difficulty. The soldiers watched as the wastrel struggled with the sword and felt surprised. They were discussing recklessly. Although they expected the outcome, it was really a mess. Thinking about it, a lazy person who only knows how to eat, how could they possibly wield a sword well? Although the initial posture was not bad, after only 2 swings, it was already ruined. I think it's our lazy young master, probably remembering what happened last time when he was publicly humiliated by the neighboring young lord. He probably came here to pretend to train. After all, he's still a young master among the lazy people. Although he didn't make a sound at the time, he really remembered it in his heart. Someone even bet that he couldn't last 3 hours. But to everyone's surprise, this lazy young master persisted in wielding his sword for 3 days. Besides eating, drinking, and sleeping, the wandering knight who happened to pass by shook his head upon hearing this. His breathing was in disarray. His strength was not enough to support the weight of the sword. He was now quite good at wielding the sword, but only because of the humiliation from the neighboring young lord. This kind of intention towards the sword itself is the greatest insult. In the blink of an eye, 10 days had passed. The old knight realized that he had been severely slapped in the face. Initially, he thought that he only started practicing because of that pitiful self-esteem and would give up after a few days. But he was wrong. This young man was like a seasoned blacksmith. His only focus was on honing his swordsmanship. His movements were unwavering, as if he had been persistent for years. This kind of will unexpectedly appeared in a young man. If this young man could continue to practice his swordsmanship and have an excellent teacher to inspire his potential, then the height he can reach will definitely be unimaginable to everyone. When the soldier heard that the lord was looking for a sword master for the young man, he immediately shouted no. He knew how unreliable the knight named Zuklin. He also ignored the soldier, who was still surprised. He couldn't let such a good piece of jade be carved up in front of him. The old knight went directly to the lord and said that his son was not ordinary. He looked like a great emperor and could not be given to Zuklin. The lord was surprised by what the old knight said and looked at the recommendation letter he pushed to him. He heard that there was no relationship between origin and sex. Only those with ability would be selected for training. Known as the strongest sword school on the continent, the Chrono Sword School, just becoming an official student there would have higher treatment than the nobility, so it was very difficult to persist there. After a night of hesitation, the lord decided to let his son try it. When he heard that his father was letting him go to the continent's strongest sword school, he hesitated. Could he really do it? Since his mother's death 10 years ago, he had been lying in bed for 10 years, wasting 10 years. Every time he was wrapped in a bed, it was as if he was lying in his mother's embrace. It was so warm here, but he didn't want to waste any more time. For himself, for his deceased mother, and for his loving family, he decided to try. The next morning, after his father, sister, and current mother said goodbye, he left the place where he had lived for over 10 years with his butler. After a month of hardships, a grand gate appeared in front of Ein. The butler also wanted to go to Ein together, but he was interrupted. Ein stated that he doesn't want to rely on others anymore and wants to rely on himself. This made the old butler, who has been taking care of him since he was a child, emotional, thinking that the young master has finally grown up. And in front of Ein, there was a group of people. The guards said arrogantly that this was a noble of the Jevra kingdom, the young master of the Bushiat family, and handed over a recommendation letter. This was from the famous Korsvidi knight. The gatekeeper knight didn't mind and let them in. At this time, another knight noticed that all the people who came for the assessment recently were geniuses with guards behind them, and it was rare to see someone like Ein. Ein quickly handed over the recommendation letter and said that he was Ein of the Pereira family, and this was a recommendation letter written by the wandering knight Bland for him. The knight was surprised and said, "Bland, sir, that was a knight who had been fighting on the front line against demons decades ago. How could you get his recommendation letter? Come in quickly. Good luck." "Thank you." Looking at Ein's back, the knight whispered, "He actually came here with Bland sir's introduction letter. I heard that he is the big lazybones in the Pereira family. I don't know why the famous Bland sir would write a recommendation letter for this weakling. Watch, he probably won't last long and will be eliminated soon." And the young man who pushed the door and immediately attracted everyone's attention. "Isn't this the famous big lazybones young master? How did he get in? Could the Chrono Sword School also have a back door? Forget him. This kid can't stay long anyway." At this time, the speaker on the stage interrupted the whispering below. "I'm sure you all know that you are not official students of the Chrono Sword School yet. It's just just a preparatory student. And next, you will face 2 brutal tests. If you can still stand here a year later, then you can become a formal student. Of course, by then, you will also experience what is called hellish training. Novices, follow me. This will be your training ground for endurance in the future. Now let me see where your limits are. Keep up with me with all your might. But at this extreme running speed, Ain quickly panted and fell to the ground. It's no wonder he's a waste of a young master. He can't even run for 10 minutes. And at this moment, Ain feels difficulty breathing and his heart is about to explode. He feels like he's going to die if he keeps going. But compared to that, what does the man in his dreams matter? He's determined to become that kind of man. And the mentor who has been watching Ain all this time sees him stand up and is pleased with a smile. He's not a bad recommendation. There's something to him. And the doctor beside him observes for a moment and finds something wrong. This guy's running steps don't seem like normal fatigue. A normal person should be unable to move at this point. Not good. Just as Ain falls again, he is saved by the doctor with a flash. As expected, this is a symptom of physical extreme exhaustion. He's a strange guy. But when Ain opens his eyes again, he's in a strange room. Before he can figure out what's going on, he's interrupted by a voice next to him. You're awake. I'm the doctor and mentor here. With your weak body, I'm sure we'll see each other often. Let's not talk about that now. Since you woke up, he quickly went to class for me. I don't allow you to skip class from the first day. Ain, who had a confused look on his face, was directly taken to the classroom. The doctor on the podium said that students can have free time after class every day. The training field and indoor fitness training classrooms will always be open. If there are students who want to undertake independent training, they can train at any time. Ain heard this and his mouth corner slightly hooked up. Finally, he could hold a sword, but the next second, the corner of his mouth that he just hooked up was shattered. The doctor pointing to the sky. However, students are prohibited from using weapons for training. After evening class, a group of blue-haired young master walked grandly into the fitness training room. A girl lifting a 500 kilograms barbell with ease. Not only was he shocked by she, but he also realized that he and the girl in front of him had a huge gap. He couldn't even think about chasing after her. But this arrogant girl, on the first day, showed interest in Ain, who was at the tail end. She walking up to Ain and talking about something. This amazing scene suddenly attracted everyone's attention. When the girl left, Ain turned back and everyone pretended not to notice. This scene is as funny as it is. But the straightforward red-haired girl didn't care and walked up to Ain. She directly asked, what did Ilya the first day tell you? Were you guys lovers before? Ain said that they just met for the first time. Although he didn't believe it, he had to leave in anger. In the following month, people often saw Ilya guiding Ain's training. Although he seemed indifferent on the surface, he was not happy inside. Ilya, he can't surpass. But Ain, who has been lazy for over 10 years, now no matter how hard he tries, what's the use? Only because Ilya encouraged him to try harder. When it comes to the assessment, the accepting failure Ain will become the same lazy young master as before. It's surprising that this lazy young master, who is viewed by everyone, is able to push his body to the limit every day. Another 3 months have passed, and since when? The once arrogant young masters who didn't care about Ain have silently turned him into their rival. And this day, the midterm exam will be held. The exam process is divided into 4 stages. The first stage is to push 1,000 times. The second stage is to jump 100 times. The third stage is to run 3 kilometers. And the fourth stage is to swim 2 kilometers. And those who can't reach the finish line within 2 hours will be eliminated. Everyone looked at the late Ain with surprise. His wet clothes and the smelly figure of sweat. Did he train all night before the exam? Ah, what a fool. Wait to be eliminated. Ilya also noticed that Ain's state today is not right, but he didn't say anything. Soon the competition began. Looking at the amazing and easygoing Ilya, the young master with the blue hair couldn't even think of catching up. He could only take second place. Ilya, this monster, is not someone that can be compared to. But when he glanced at Ain, his pupils contracted fiercely. Ain was sweating profusely with a difficult look on his face, but his speed was only slightly slower than Ilya's. Has this guy gone crazy? This will make him faint. Before he finished his thoughts, he heard the supervisor's loud shout. Ilya passed the first stage of the exam. He finished 1,000 so quickly. This is too outrageous, right? But in the next second, everyone blew their top. Ain passed the first stage of the exam. Holy cow! How could this lazy young master be so fast? Don't pay attention to him. Only the first stage is fast. What's the point? Anyway, he'll be eliminated soon. But Ain doesn't care about their cold words and sarcastic comments. Even he is surprised. His body seems different from usual. He feels a burning heat flowing through his body. Even if he tries to use all his strength to move, he doesn't feel like he's pushing himself. He looks at the figure in front of him and has a strange idea. He wants to surpass her. He wants to catch up to the figure in front of him. But the next second, a figure quickly passed by them. It's a red-haired girl. She is the only civilian student among many students. Because of the ridicule of people around her, and to prove herself, she trained day and night. Her training volume during this time is not much less than Ain's. Just as she met Ain, the two of them finished the first stage early. She is unwilling and wants to compete for first place. She wants to prove herself. She also knows that the power that bursts out now is consuming her potential in advance. But what does it matter? She can't lose. But the next second, her face changed dramatically, and her leg was racked with pain. Damn it, why did it cramp up now? If I can swim past, I can win. Watching Ilya swim past her, the red-haired girl's face is full of unwillingness and deep despair. Is this the end? I'm tired, really tired. I just want to take a rest like this. But in the next second, a ray of light pierces her eye sockets. She opens her eyes to find it's Ain. For this period of time, she has always treated Ain as a rival. Why is it you and not someone else? else. When the two of them got to shore, those behind them had also followed. At this time, the doctor also happened to arrive. He quickly told Ein to go back and compete again. He handed over the red-haired girl to him, and after the assessment was over, 35 people passed this assessment. Ein barely made it to 34th place because of saving someone, but he still faced ridicule from others. What's this guy pretending to be good for? He did something useless during the exam, but it's still thanks to this idiot that I was able to make it into the top 5. The top 5 can get rewards from the head of the guild. The next day, Ein, who was training alone, was questioned by Ilya. Why did you do that? I just felt like I should have done that. Ein's words immediately earned a scolding from Ilya. What are you doing being foolish? Even if you didn't go save her, the instructor next to her would have gone to save her. You gave up the reward of being the head of the guild on the mainland just for this small thing. I heard that you haven't touched a sword since last year, but training the body and training swordsmanship are completely different. You may completely lose the opportunity to be taught swordsmanship by the head of the guild due to the decision you made yesterday. At that time, you will once again become a laughingstock among people. I also won't bother helping you anymore. I hope you won't regret this in the future. In the blink of an eye, the ranking of the assessment was announced and the top 5 in the conference had already stood on the stage. Just when everyone thought that in the next second the head of the guild would announce the rewards, they only heard the head of the guild say in a loud voice, "This time, the rewards are not for 5 people, but for 6 people. Please have the 318th preparatory student Ein come up to the stage." As soon as this statement was made, everyone was in an uproar. They couldn't believe that the last ranked student could come up to the stage. Only the master of the hall spoke leisurely, saying that people always gain growth and achievement in the process of chasing others. But if they become too immersed in this feeling, they will easily not notice the things around them and miss what is truly important. However, Ein is different. He chose to sacrifice his own interests at a critical moment to save a drowning classmate. Our collective instructors all believe that Ein's behavior is valuable, and that is why he is standing on the stage. Next is the one-on-one questioning by the master of the hall. The award-winning students all want something, and the audience are all from wealthy families. The requests are all related to guidance. I hope that the master can practice with me and provide guidance. The master of the hall smiled and politely refused, saying, "That's a bit difficult. Ilya, don't let others affect your own path. Go back to your family and learn your own sword techniques. That is the path that is most suitable for yourself." Ilya is a super genius in the eyes of the world, but in her family, she is only the second genius because her brother's light is too bright. Whenever she makes some achievements, the praise she hears is, as expected of his sister. She has had enough of this kind of life, so she decided to follow her brother's path and surpass him. And her brother, who was the first genius of the first sword hall on this continent. When Ilya heard the master's advice, she firmly refused his proposal. The master of the hall had expected this. We can only respect her choice. Now only Ein is left. He has guessed all of everyone's thoughts, but he can't figure out Ein. It's what Ein wants that makes us curious. He, known as the waste young master, when facing the strongest sword arts hall's master, only made one request: tell him how to make amends with the girl. The master was silent upon hearing this, making it difficult for him, an old bachelor. Everyone else wanted to get more sword arts guidance from him, but this kid wasted such an opportunity. The master couldn't show that he didn't understand in order to maintain his image, so he made some vague excuses. I nodded happily, but as he was about to thank the old master and leave, he was called back. The owner of the hall seems to be out of deceit and feels embarrassed, so he opened his mouth and said that he could give him some pointers on swordsmanship. If there's anything he don't understand, he can ask him now. Ein was taken aback and said that he didn't know what to ask about sword arts because he had only been practicing for a month, unlike others who had been practicing since childhood, and he didn't know what he wanted. The master heard this and said that he could come back and ask him later. The master watched Ein's receding figure with a strange feeling. He clearly didn't understand sword arts, but he didn't have the confusion and insecurity that others had, as if someone was guiding him from behind. Inside the newly opened training room, everyone looked at the red-haired girl clinging to Ein with a strange expression. The red-haired girl had never given Ein a good face before, but now they saw her clinging to Ein and chatting with a hint of flattery. This must be from last time when her head got submerged in water. Reflecting on Ilya, who has been guiding Ein, these two people have been strangers in these 2 days, without any communication, treating them as competitors, and secretly observing the blue-haired young master, who looks confused. With the instructor's command, everyone picked up their swords of choice, although they were only wooden swords, but they were made of high-density wood and were heavier than ordinary iron swords. After 4 months of training, they finally realized the transformation of this period of time. The feeling of swords and bodies becoming one is something they have never experienced before. At this time, with Ein's movements, everyone's attention was immediately attracted. They saw him walk to the wall and slowly take down the giant sword on the wall, and when his hands held the sword, an inexplicable momentum emerges from within. Then Ein strikes out with a sword. The momentum was majestic. At the moment, smoke fills the air, and this time, the blue-haired young master could not bear Ein showing off his skills. He walked forward and pointed his sword at Ein and said, "I, Lloyd, want to challenge you. Dare you?" But before Ein could agree to his challenge, the owner of the hall, who was interested, jumped out and immediately agreed. With him watching, nothing could happen, and he believed that these young people were also looking forward to the showdown. With the start sound falling, the blue-haired young master rushed forward like a ghost. Ein, who had no experience in battle, panicked when faced with this sudden attack, raising his sword to barely block this sword that was heading towards his right arm. The slightly immediately surprised blue-haired young master did not stop, changed positions and struck again, but was barely dodged. Next, he faced the blue-haired young master's attacks that were blowing wildly, and he blocked them all, but it was very laborious. But this was enough to make the students watching from the outside be surprised. They thought Ein would be killed by a move, but now it seems that this will be a long battle. But the red-haired girl beside him did not think so. She could see that the blue-haired young master had not used his full strength and was just testing Ein. Just as the red-haired girl thought, he now saw Ein's shortcomings. Although his reaction speed and physical fitness were very strong, when he held a huge sword to block the attack, his body was easily unbalanced. There are also his defense and moves. There are no moves to say. It's like a brute. It's as if he didn't understand the sword, and he hadn't learned swordsmanship. Then let him try the power of this gravedigger. Looking at the blue-haired young master who was diving in front of him, Ein subconsciously raised his sword and chopped down, and looking at the huge sword coming towards him, he had a slightly nervous look in his eyes. His body involuntarily dodged, flashed to Ein's right, and then picked up his sword, easily knocked down the huge sword in his hand on the ground. With the end of the competition, the instructor will also announce the content of today, which is the team list of training personnel. The teams are divided into groups A, B, and C. The people in Group A will be the strongest among these students. Of course, the training intensity of Group A will also be the greatest. The members of Group A are the prodigy Ilya, the heir of Lloyd Earl's blue-haired young master, and the red-haired girl from the civilian area. But when the instructor finished reading the list of group members and put down the list, the red-haired girl and Ein were both surprised. The personnel list for Groups ABC has been read, but why is there no name of Ein? Before he could think more, he heard the instructor continue. After a unanimous decision by all our instructors, Ein will be assigned to Group F alone. This class only has Ein, and only basic sword techniques are taught. In order to test Ein's sword talent, the instructor gave him a goal to participate in an assessment 7 days later. Sure enough, after 7 days of individual systematic training by the instructor, Ein's strength improved rapidly, and he successfully entered Class C. During this time, a red-haired girl accompanied Ein in training. But today, a special scene occurred. The blue-haired boy who had always been at odds with him unexpectedly ran over and asked Ein to communicate more in the future. Before Ein could react from his confusion, he heard the blue-haired boy say, "In the last moment of our battle last time, I originally wanted to fight with you fiercely, but when I faced your focused eyes and all your focus concentrated on that one sword, I hesitated and unconsciously dodged. So I hope you can teach me the method of having this kind of focus as an exchange. I will also guide your sword technique." Before Ein could express himself, he heard the disdainful voice of the red-haired girl from the side. "Hey, didn't you try to test Ein last time? What do you want to do this time? You just want to use Ein to help yourself grow quickly, right?" The blue-haired boy did not refute this at all, but said, "Use? I am using him. But so what? He can also use me. Although one person can also improve, it's too slow. We need to learn not only the sword techniques in the sword school, but also accumulate different experiences with different people. We need to broaden our horizons. That, I am not as good as you in all aspects. Are you sure you can learn something from me? This won't trouble you anymore. I've already said it. I just want to learn from you what I don't have. I've been thinking about it these past few days. The time we spend training here isn't that different. But why is the progress you've made several times greater than ours? Now I finally understand. Even though our training time is similar, you are able to maintain 100% focus from beginning to end, something we can't compare to. So please tell me, how do you do it?" "Well, I actually don't know. I knew you would say that. But starting tomorrow, I will train with you. I will definitely uncover your secret." Lying in bed at night, Ein was constantly thinking about what the blue-haired young master and he said today about how to improve focus. If this focus can be improved, then maybe he can get closer to that man in her dreams. When he enters the dream again, he is surprised to find that the man in front of him he dreams of every day, but this time it feels different. He can feel the reality in his hands and throughout his body, like the grass and trees in reality. Even this man in front of his feels very real. Just as he was about to approach him to communicate, he wakes up suddenly. He looks at the moon and finds that it's only 2:30 in the morning, but he has no intention of sleeping anymore. The feeling the dream just gave him is too strange. He has a premonition that if he trains swords with this strange feeling, he will definitely achieve twice the result with half the effort. In the next few days, the red-haired girl discovered that Ein always seemed sluggish during the day, as if he had been stealing chickens at night. At this time, the blue-haired boy who was practicing with the red-haired girl, however, discovered a shocking scene. Ein, who had always been the most hardworking, was actually sleeping during training time, but the next second, he would sit up and swing a sword, and then lie down again in seconds. This comical scene immediately aroused the blue-haired boy's interest. He immediately walked over and asked Ein what he was doing, and scratched his head, laughed and said, "I am training to improve my concentration, but it doesn't seem to be working." The blue-haired boy then realized, "Is this meditation training? I have heard of it. It's for stabilizing the mind and self-reflection, right? Okay, I'll try it too." As expected, the blue-haired boy slept very well, until his friend came to call him for lunch. He woke up. He stubbornly said he was training, but the saliva he left while sleeping betrayed him. The blue-haired boy didn't give up. He thought that it must be his posture that was wrong, so he immediately changed his meditation posture, until a few weeks later when Ein successfully entered Class B, and the Sword Academy was greeted with a wave of meditation and sitting. The next day, Ein looked at Ilya, who always eats alone, and the red-haired girl who always teases him and Ilya. Ein secretly decided to go find Ilya tonight. Soon, night fell. Ilya, as usual, was practicing alone in the small practice field. Suddenly, she opened opened her eyes and saw that the person coming was Ayn. She coldly opened her mouth. "What are you doing here?" Ayn quickly approached, took out a gift and a letter, saying that this was a letter I wrote to you. "I have a sister who, like me, is not good at interacting with people. We often argue over small things, but every time I wake up, I see the gifts and letters she gives me. I'm not good at talking. When I want to express something, my mind always becomes confused, so I also try to write out my thoughts. Now I seem to be able to understand my sister." Ilya looked at the gifts and letters in his hand, was silent for a moment, and still indifferently said, "Even if it's like this, I'm not going to continue to help you." Ayn heard it and just smiled lightly and said, "It's okay. I disturbed your practice. Then I'll go back first." In the middle of the night, for some reason, he opened the letter Ayn wrote to him. How childish. The gift is a bracelet, but when he looked closely at the flower pattern, his face suddenly changed. The flower pattern is called the Fu Shou flower, which means the flower of revenge. Obviously, because of this flower, Ilya's long-sealed memories were dug out, but soon she regained her calm, self-deprecatingly saying, "Maybe I'm too picky." Blue-haired young master and the red-haired girl are quite evenly matched, but after imitating Ayn's meditation practice, he broke through a battle level in just 2 weeks. Now his confidence is bursting. Even the first day Ilya in the academy, as long as he doesn't use the sword technique of his family, he dares to challenge. But what a coincidence. Ilya heard the blue-haired young master's bragging words. Ilya's eyes were cold and he said, "I don't care if you belittle me and my family, but you are a person without character who speaks bad behind others' backs. Even if I don't use my family's sword technique, I will still be the first in this test, and in the future, it will always be me." Seeing Ilya about to leave, Blue Hair quickly stopped her and said, "I heard that your family got the name of Sky Sword because they defeated the ruler of the sky, the Dragon King, 400 years ago, right? So what? I want to see how powerful this sword technique is. You won't be able to see it." Ilya turned and walked away, and Blue Hair shouted, "If you don't use the Sky Sword technique, the first place will be mine." Later, when Ilya left the training room, she bumped into two familiar figures, the red-haired girl and Ayn. "Sorry." The red-haired girl apologized unexpectedly, and Ayn was surprised. She continued, "I'm actually an orphan. I'm not saying this to make you feel sorry for me. When I was young, I had to steal to survive, and everyone hated me. I've never met anyone worth thanking, and I've never expressed gratitude to anyone. So on the day you saved me, I couldn't honestly say thank you, but I got angry with you. I wanted to repay you in my own way, but I feel like I messed up again. You have to pass the test. Becoming a formal student and staying here is the only way I can repay you properly and make up for my apologies." The red-haired girl said these words from her heart before blushing and leaving in a hurry, and simply smiled contentedly in response. Who would have thought that the once bedridden Ayn is now someone who sits in the envy of all in the first sword academy on the continent, looking at the sky? It's been a year since he has been in the sword academy, and recently, Ayn has found that his progress is getting slower and slower. Even though he used to feel like he was getting close to that man in his dreams, he now feels like the man is getting further and further away from him. Just as Ayn was meditating again, his brain suddenly clicked. Maybe to become like the man in his dreams, he should be meditating while holding a sword, but after much effort, Ayn found that it was of no use. He wondered how he was going to do it, but in the next moment, he suddenly felt better. He remembered all the little moments throughout the year, his friends who had high expectations of him, his mentors and the head of the school who had nurtured him with care. It was time to repay them. At that moment, Ayn seemed to have undergone a transformation from within. 2 weeks later, as the instructor shouted, the final test officially began. Some students swung their wooden swords and cut the leaves that were floating in the air. Some students split stones with just one swing of the sword, and the cuts were smooth and delicate, as if they were polished with modern technology. Next up was the red-haired girl, Judith, but she was going to show her strength in a different way by sparring with other students. The head of the school was also interested and agreed. Just then, the blue-haired young man stepped forward, and without hesitation, the red-haired girl charged forward. The huge sound of the impact startled the students outside. The blue-haired young man was also surprised. Although they had sparred before, the red-haired girl's power was now 30% stronger than before. How could she have improved so much? But soon he calmed down and made a counterattack. He faced her fierce attack calmly. They fought for half an hour without a clear winner, but in the last collision, they both stopped. The red-haired girl's sword broke. Although they fought fiercely, they both knew the result. The red-haired girl immediately admitted defeat. They were both very satisfied with the sparring and thanked the head of the school with a bow. And then the genius Ilya. The blue-haired young man's growth during this time made him confident. As he looked at Ilya passing by, he felt that he might be able to defeat her. The proprietor looked at Ilya standing there and asked her what kind of way she was going to use to show her strength. When Bluebeard heard that Ilya was going to use the sky sword technique from her family, he smiled slightly, but the next second he froze. Suddenly, there was a strong wind around him, and as she stabbed her sword, countless wind blades shot out. Just the aftershock of the wind blades made people feel like their skin was being scraped. At that moment, Blue Hair realized how ridiculous his previous thoughts were. Ilya was still an insurmountable barrier for him. Now, only one person had not yet begun the test, and that was Ayn. Blue Hair believed that Ayn would definitely pass the test, and he also considered Ayn a friend. But as he looked at Ayn's figure walking out, he felt uneasy. He hoped that Ayn would get a good ranking, but he was also afraid that he would be too outstanding. He now only wanted to beg Ayn not to be too outstanding. Having one Ilya that he couldn't surpass was already enough. He was a lazy young master that everyone looked down on, but now he was standing in the top sword technique hall in the continent, ready to showcase his vertical cut. Upon hearing this, the students all shouted in anger, "You crazy person! This is the final test. How dare you use the simplest vertical cut to pass it off? But Ein paid no attention to them and closed his eyes to adjust his breathing. At this moment, all outside sounds were cut off by him. The moment Ein opened his eyes, a vast energy spread from his body. With one vertical cut, the ground shook and smoke filled the air. The students all looked at this scene in disbelief. When the smoke cleared, they saw that Ein had split the testing ground in half with just a wooden sword. This also allowed Ein, who was originally at the bottom of the class, to get second place in the final test. The first place was Ilya, who used the sky sword technique from her family. The next morning, Ilya pushed open the door to the training room and sighed. I knew that the only person who would come to train the day after the exam would be you, Ein. After sitting in silence for a while, Ilya spoke. Ein, I won't stay in the chrono sword technique hall anymore. Ein was shocked upon hearing this. What? Why? Is this reaction because you can't bear to part with it? Ein's face turned red and her neck thickened as she hurriedly spoke to defend herself. But Ilya continued. Actually, from the beginning, I never intended to become a formal student here. I originally planned to become the head of the Chrono Sword Guild after getting first place and then return to my family. When I was very young, my brother, who was only 3 years older than me, had already reached an unparalleled level and was known as the continent's first genius. But just as my brother was gaining the attention of everyone, a person appeared before him. She was a commoner, but was the head of the Chrono Sword Guild from the previous year and was known as the second genius. After becoming head, she did not stay in the guild as a formal student, but instead went out to travel and quietly ran into my brother and challenged him to a match. Of course, my brother accepted her challenge, but the result was unexpected. She defeated my brother with only 3 moves of the Igonet. That was the first time I saw my idol fall. I ran up and hugged my brother, crying, but then my brother came over and smiled, comforting me. I believed that my brother would eventually defeat her, but from that day on, people gradually became cold and indifferent towards my brother, with even more ridicule and accusations. My brother was experiencing this kind of treatment for the first time, and the pressure and despair made him unable to bear it. At that time, I could only helplessly watch my brother gradually collapse. Then I swore that I would never be swayed by others' comments like my brother was. But without realizing it, I had already been influenced by a Kagami. I came here because a Kagami became the chief here when she was 1 year older than me. But now I am no longer going to chase anyone's shadow. This is also thanks to you. You never let others shake you. You don't care about their evaluations, and you firmly walk your own path. Next, I will also follow my own heart. This unparalleled genius was tragically expelled from the mainland's first sword school, only hearing the master say that you are not practicing sword for your own will. Although it surprises me that you can reach this level just by imitating others, but if you can't find a reason for holding a sword, then you have no reason to stay here. Ein was shocked, but the next words of the master made Ein relax. Leave here. I give you a year's time. Instead of holding a sword in this place, you should go to a broader world to find your own sword path. Ein was very happy to say goodbye to the master. The butler who came to pick him up saw that Ein was silent all the way. He thought that his young master was sad for not passing the exam. Just as he was about to speak to comfort him, the driver suddenly shouted, "Young master, the Gain family's carriage is coming towards us." The butler was shocked. Gain's second son, Gain, used to bully Ein and made him a public disgrace. But Gain and his elder brother got off the carriage, and Alan Gain came down from the carriage. The butler wanted to advise Ein not to get off the car, but he was rejected by him. Gain, who got off the car, was shocked to see Ein. He last saw Ein as a weak and delicate figure, but now not only is his height taller than him, but the whole person's temperament has also changed a lot. This really surprised him, but after reacting, he didn't care. A waist is still a waist even if it grows taller. A higher waist. Ein, it's been a long time. It's no wonder that you stayed in the first sword art house on the continent for a year. I almost didn't recognize you. Will you practice sword in the future? After all, you started so late. I'm afraid other places won't accept you. The butler was so angry when he heard this arrogant words, but Ein didn't care and said calmly, "If you have nothing to do, I'll leave first." Gain was shocked at first, but when he reacted, his anger rose. He was actually ignored by this waste. This can't be endured. He immediately called Ein and extended his right hand to indicate that he wanted to test Ein's progress in this year. He dared to be so arrogant. Seeing Ein hooked, he smiled coldly and suddenly exerted his force, but he didn't expect the painful and twisted expression to appear on Ein's face. All he saw was a calm face. The Lord's young master was directly stunned. What's going on? He didn't even feel the other's hand using force. Why did it bring him such a strong sense of oppression? I must use force, right? The Lord's young master was shocked and screamed in the next moment. He quickly withdrew his hand and looked fierce and unbelievable. He had actually let go of this waste's hand first. Ein felt bored and wanted to leave, but was attracted by a sudden voice. "That's it. What are you waiting for? Go give him a punch." Everyone looked at the talking cat. Is this cat the legendary advanced magician? The little black cat saw that everyone was still in a daze and walked forward on his own. He took out a girl's pink bag and started searching. Soon he took out a small sword and swung it while speaking. "How about I lend you the sword to fight?" Like this, everyone heard and came up with excuses to leave. They didn't dare to stay with someone who seemed to be an advanced magician, fearing that they wouldn't be able to go back. Ein returned home and found that everyone in the house knew this black cat. This black cat was named Lulu. It was not an advanced magician, but a cat mage with super high IQ and magic talent. It had wanted to take Ein's younger sister as a disciple before, but her arrogant sister would never let a little cat be her master. Regardless of its strength, she refused without hesitation. But while Ein's family was having dinner and chatting, Lulu sneaked out without anyone noticing. Meow. So you're Cyril's brother. No wonder there's such a familiar smell. Cyril suddenly picked up Lulu and screamed, "What are you doing here?" Lulu was a bit embarrassed when it was picked up, but it explained politely, "It's just that Cyril refused to be a cat apprentice." Cyril brother looks quite easy to conquer. When the cat conquers Cyril brother, according to Cyril's love for his brother, Lulu's words were not finished yet. She covered her cat's mouth. How could it say its inner thoughts out loud? Cyril smelled the words and was shy and angry. She quickly slammed the door and ran away. On the other side, the old lord of the next door's lord's house heard that the lazy young master Ein had become so powerful and shouted directly. He had always disliked Pereira, who was of the same age and also a lord. He had a wife who was famous for her beauty and a daughter who became a magician, not to mention, but his hair was still so good, and the only one who was bullied was a soft one. He also began to rise. How could he not be angry? But at this time, a voice in the corner made him calm down. "Father, don't panic. The war of the 6 major families is about to begin. At that time, we can take the opportunity to pull the lazy young master back to the valley bottom." The lazy young master, who is known for his laziness, is exercising. The soldiers looked at this scene and were all unbelievable. When I was doing pull-ups with a big iron piece, a soldier was very dissatisfied. Since he came back here, he must have been eliminated by the strongest land pavilion. The dissatisfied soldier immediately went to the iron block. "I can do it too," but as soon as he touched it, he couldn't even buckle it. The defeated soldier could only pretend that nothing had happened. But in the following days, they realized the horror of their own young master. In physical training, they all ran out of breath, but our young master not only had no fatigue, even sweat did not leave a drop. It's really horrible. Looking at the tired soldiers, and also secretly sighed that they were really powerful. They were able to endure the grueling training at the Chrono Sword School on their own. If he didn't have that dream, he probably would have been eliminated by now. During this week's training, I noticed that the magic cat named Lulu had been observing him, but it never came to talk to him. This made Ein very puzzled. At this time, a soldier ran over and said, "Young master, you should be careful of that magic cat. It is said that the cat will bring misfortune. It is a cursed cat." Ein heard this and suddenly realized no wonder the soldiers were avoiding Lulu. Ein finally couldn't help but speak to Lulu and ask, "Didn't you say you were going to conquer me and take my younger sister as your apprentice? Why haven't you done anything yet?" Lulu heard this and was very lazy and casual. "Well, if you really want to know, your younger sister Cyril has a unique charm, but you are just like a roadside pebble, nothing special. Looking at you is boring." Ein was also speechless by the cat's frankness. Lulu suddenly pulled out a round ball and said that he wanted to give it to him as a bribe. It also reminded him to remember to speak well of it in front of his sister Cyril. At this time, the butler recognized the object in Lulu's hand and exclaimed, "Is this the legendary cat's eye stone? It is said that one is worth 100 million. Ein was very puzzled as to why Lulu wanted to take his sister as an apprentice and was willing to use such a valuable thing to bribe him. But Lulu didn't care and disdainfully said, "I really don't understand you humans. Why do you care so much about jewels and gold? There are more precious things than jewels, such as this wooden ball. Inside, there is a taste that I like, unique. Even if you give me 10 cat's eye stones, I wouldn't trade them. Plus, the dogtail grass and small toy that the stray cat gave me. These things, even if you give me more gold, silver, and jewelry, I wouldn't trade them." Ein finally understood Lulu a little bit after hearing this, but he still refused Lulu's bribe and said that he wouldn't accept the things. He wouldn't say something that went against his heart for the sake of some things, but he would express his true feelings about it to Cyril. Lulu, upon hearing this, carelessly walked away. The next day, Lulu came to Ein in a panicked state, saying that something big had happened. Ein was shocked and quickly followed him. Even the magician Lulu claimed that it was something big. One can imagine the severity of the situation, but who would have thought that Lulu would just stare at its cat bowl and say that it needed someone to accompany it while it ate or it would feel uneasy. This was a huge deal for it. Ein felt a bit speechless and found it a bit funny. The third day, Lulu grabbed Ein even more frantically. His expression was like the end of the world. Lulu directly pulled Ein in front of a small white cat. It asked him if you know what it is thinking now. Ein couldn't guess the cat's thoughts and directly thought of getting an answer from Lulu, but Lulu clearly said, "It was me asking you." "How could you ask me? How could I know what other cats are thinking?" Ein suddenly laughed. He hadn't been this relaxed for a long time. Before, when he was in the sword school, he only wanted to train, but suddenly Ein couldn't laugh anymore. Suddenly, he remembered the words the head of the sword school had said to him when he left. Only then did he realize that he couldn't continue like this. He had to find his own sword path. Ein walked to the training ground in the pouring rain, lifted his giant sword, and swung it down. The heavy and ancient breath filled the air, but Ein's eyes were full of regret. He couldn't wield the sword of that man, but Ein didn't know that the moment he swung that sword, Lulu's eyes suddenly widened. "Come be a cat's apprentice."